Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, April 28th, 2017. Welcome to another show. In fact, we're going to do about 17 shows today. I think this job is supposed to be pretty easy. I might as well give it a shot. What's the difference? That has to be what you're thinking about this morning. The president gave another interview, another revealing interview. He hides nothing when it comes to revealing, I don't know, how unprepared for the job he is. I assume he thought he was doing himself some favors. By now, you're all talking, I'm sure, about the interview, conducted by Reuters, I guess, and published last night, in which the president said, basically, I thought this job was going to be easier. I'm surprised at how difficult it is. I'm working harder now than I was in my old life. And I really thought things would get easier from there. And that's amazing for a million reasons, and we should spend, we're well within our rights to spend the entire day on it. I don't know whether that's really something we want to do, but it's an astounding statement. I found the audio of it. It's a lot more anticlimactic, I think, than I imagined, I guess. I mean, I don't know how much energy I thought he was going to put into saying that he thought that this job was going to be easy, but he confirmed, I guess you see what you want in it. And this is another one where we can't believe that there's any reaction to this other than, oh my God, he's so unqualified, let's get rid of him. Everyone should agree by now he's in way over his head. But I think by day's end, we'll find out that this is being interpreted by Trump supporters as a very honest statement. And I think that he thinks that people will feel sorry for him or will feel like he's doing a very noble service to the country because he is, after all, taking on more work. Now, granted, you and I, who listen to the show. You listen to the show. I don't listen to the show. I don't know what's going on this show. But those of us who listen to the show and those of us who just say the show out loud without listening know that his old life wasn't very hard. I mean, I guess he spent a lot of time at it. Almost 100% of his life was spent on his life. But, I guess if you're a rich guy or a fake rich guy or your parents gave you a lot of money, your whole day takes up all your time. You don't know whether you're busy or not. You're always doing things, so I guess you figure you're busy. I don't really know. Whether or not it rises to the level of presidential busyness, I would say most of us know that it doesn't. Anyway, we'll explore some of that. We'll thank Bill for starting us off with the morning tweet. I'm so busy these days. I'm working so much harder now than in my old life when Donald Trump wasn't president. Although we do share this, I also thought life under the 45th president was going to be much easier than it is. But, we all have surprises in life. Bill tells us from Portland, Maine. He tells you, really, I'm just following directions. Daily Coast Radio is live now, and after today's show, you'll say, Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman, is truly, look at this word, broadcasteriential. It's a little bit like presidential, but it involves broadcast. Do you understand? Listen, I just want to say that I thought this was going to be a lot easier. My old life, which we all know, as I was mentioning last night, I mean, his old life was, I feel like doing something, I'm going to go do it because who cares? I'm not due anywhere. I call my own shots. For whatever reason, despite, 18 million bankruptcies, I appear to have enough cash flow available to do whatever I want. And so, what should we do today? How about we play golf and then we go sit on the solid gold toilet. And then, if later on, if we feel like we see somebody maybe who's, an attractive member of the opposite sex, let's grab them by the genitalia, because why not? I've always worked before. If you don't get laid, you won't get arrested. What's the big deal, right? Everything's working out for me. This is a hard life. I was hoping for an easier one when I became president, but the strain of dealing with a daily existence in which I do whatever the hell I want and convince myself that it's a huge success has really been getting to me. I'm looking for some time off. Maybe the presidency is the answer. It's an astounding statement, obviously. And also, I mean, I don't know how many levels should we analyze this on? None, really. But what an amazing conceit, by the way, to think, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You know, what's the fate of the world? What's that compared to, I feel like I should do this. And it's the ultimate success. I mean, for a guy who measures success, and I guess here we'll have to go into a thread I started last night. It turns out if you tweet a bunch of things in a row that make good sense to people, the tradition, as it turns out, on Twitter is for everybody to tweet thread at you. Now, they're really not tweeting it at you. They're tweeting it at everybody else and saying, thread, read this thread. But you wake up and if you did a good job, your mentions is full of people saying thread to you, which is, I don't know what that exactly is, but maybe we should give people thread for things like, you remember that scene in A Beautiful Mind where everybody comes and gives John Nash a pen in the faculty dining room? Everybody should give you thread. You did it was a congratulations, Professor, a Nobel Prize winning thread on Twitter. Here, have some thread. We might as well go through all of that. Because, I mean, that's just one of the many levels on which this thing has to be viewed. And I guess it begins to illustrate why we're likely to see this morning that, and if you weren't ready for it, it turns out today's the day that you're going to wake up and learn for the first time that if you didn't think being president of the United States was easier than whatever your current job is, you're the one that's out of touch with real Americans. Chris Arnade will make sure that you understand it that way. I mean, I assume that they're going to look at this and say, it's true. He's working much harder than ever before, and he definitely used to work extremely hard, harder than I've ever worked, certainly. And the proof of that is he's rich, except, of course, you and I know he's not rich. And there's no explaining that to people, but it becomes part of the complicating issue. Anyway, I'll tell you what people were talking about this morning. If all you woke up to was the words thread, and it led you to this particular thread, then you already know. But if you haven't seen this one, it struck me last night that it was actually one of the many levels on which we should be looking at this Trump admission that presidenting is hard. And remember, George W. Bush did say that. I mean, he did tell us that presidenting was hard. So it's been out there for a while. And I guess, by the way, I would say, you're not going to convince me that W was really smarter in any way. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess, I'm forced to acknowledge that I'd rather be living under George W. Bush's presidency, as it then existed, than this one. I'm not so certain that George W. Bush's presidency, given this same team that we have behind Trump, I don't know that it's actually any better than the Trump presidency has been. I think the same things begin to happen. The big difference being Cheney was a lot better at knowing how to run a government terribly than Bannon or Reince Priebus or Stephen Miller, or, you know, pick your own adventure, villain, I guess. So what struck me though about all this, aside from the amazing arrogance, one of believing you could do anything in the world and it would be easy. And yes, by the way, a lot of people did point out to me that there's an extraordinary element of racism in this. It's not overt on the surface, but if you start off by thinking, yes, Donald Trump is an amazing, outrageous racist, then it would likely occur to you, as it occurred to many people who kind of prodded me or prompted me to say something about this. There's likely the thing where Donald Trump thinks, how hard could the job be? After all, a black guy used to do it. And I mean, look, I gotta say, it's not overt in his statements, right? But if you believe that that's where his head is, it's not hard to believe that that's also going on in his head. I guess I would give him what would amount to credit in pointing out that he never actually just comes out and says that. And he doesn't usually self-censor all that well. So, I don't know. Maybe he's not thinking that, but I guess what really, the reason I didn't address it is other people were addressing it much better and from a much more personal place than I could, because I'm basically a white guy, and though I understand the premise, maybe I just felt like I should step back on that issue and let other people speak on it and just endorse what they say. I just wanted to speak to this other part, which I guess I'm perhaps no more qualified to speak to the Masters of the Universe 1% crowd than I am to black folks about racism. But no one will stop me, and no one will say that I'm being horribly insensitive to the 1% by musing on their predicament. So I'll go that way. It's the path of least resistance. So it struck me as I was thinking about all this stuff that it really was extraordinarily important that that Trump was expressing this idea that this was going to be an easy job. It reminded me a lot of that time when, and this was during or immediately following the big government bailout after the bursting of the financial bubble. You remember when we were first finding out that a lot of these Wall Street companies and investment firms, et cetera, were planning on using at least some, if not most, of their bailout money on bonuses, gigantic bonuses for people who had blown up the economy. And we thought, well, that's certainly something that shouldn't be paid with any bailout money. There should be some kind of clawback provision on those dollars. Of course, we learned very quickly from that experience and the complaints that it engendered that it doesn't actually really work that way. And why don't you just claw the money back isn't a particularly good answer to the problem, and you can't really make it happen all that easily. But I was thinking more about the people who responded to the notion that a clawback would make common sense, if not legislative and political sense, or legal sense, even though it kind of made all of those things. It just wasn't going to happen. But the threat was enough to prompt a lot of angry letters to the editor, sometimes actual letters to the editor, and then other times just sort of angry screeds circulating on social media about how certain Wall Street types were fed up with the idea that they should lose their bonuses and all this, and that if they did, they were just going to take their ball and go home. They were going to, as you remember the terminology, they were going to go galt. And that was going to show us all the rest of us schlubs who don't run the world as a master of the universe, a titan of Wall Street, even though most of these people were, I think, probably mostly nameless drones on Wall Street. They're extraordinarily rich, don't get me wrong. It's just that you can be pulling $1 million plus a year on Wall Street and be a nobody by comparison, anyway, to the people who really pull the strings on Wall Street. But you recall that they were saying, I will take my ball and go home, and then you'll all suffer. You'll all see how important finance really is to running this place, and you'll beg me to come back. But I will have none of it because I will be camped out in Galt's Gulch, where, we all knew he would very quickly discover the importance of having paid landscapers and housekeepers and people to cook meals at fine restaurants for him and bring him beautifully aged wine, et cetera, et cetera. You're not going to be able to live your life in Galt's Gulch either. You'll come back just as soon as the rest of us. But, that's the ancient myth of capital in this country. So, okay, I'm not going to solve that one today. But the what I thought was interesting was about those kind of people. They had a similar mindset, I think, to Donald Trump, in that they all really thought that one, they thought we would learn a lesson, and two, they thought that the lesson that we would pick up on is, well, you're just an ingrate if you don't appreciate what these finance guys are doing. Sure, you might be jealous of all their money, but it's the good that they're doing is staring you in the face. Now, how do you mean that? To me, I was like, what are you talking about? What's the good? I'm staring me in the face. I still don't see it. And the answer was the money. The money is the objective measure of the goodness, the worthiness of what we're doing. They all thought, for serious now, that they were working harder than anybody else in the world, even the President of the United States. And they thought so because the only metric that matters to them is money. And to them, money equals success equals hard work. We're all taught, well, if you work hard and play by the rules, they forget about that part. Right. They forget about the well-organized militia. They also forget the play by the rules part. Work hard and do some other thing. I can't remember what it is. Then you'll succeed in life. And to succeed in life, objectively, the only universally accepted measure of succeeding in life is having lots of money. Now, yes, even they understand. Sure, there are other people who have other metrics. Oh, I don't know. Family, happiness, justice, well-being, a sense of peace, whatever the hell, all these stupid things that other people value as success. Everybody knows that having money makes everything a lot easier, and everybody wants to have a whole bunch of money. Even the people who think it's the root of all evil want to have a bunch of money, and they want to give, I don't know, maybe they want to give a lot of this root of all evil to other people. Perhaps that's their motivation. I don't know. But everybody knows money's great. And I got to admit, money's pretty good. I'd like to have all of it. And if I did, I would give some of it to you, the listener. If I really had all of it, I'd have to, I think, in order to make sense of the world. Anyway, the issue here is that's the only one that they recognize, and they think everyone else recognizes it at the same level that they do, even if that's not really true. But it doesn't matter whether other people actually value other things more than money. Those people are peons. They don't, of course they value other things other than money. They don't have any money. They have to value other things. It's a self-defense mechanism for those people to think money isn't everything. 'Cause it is. In fact, look at all the things that you can buy with money. Everything. So there you go. Oh, they say money can't buy you love. They do say that, but then again, I marry models, and then when they get old, I divorce them, and then I marry other models. And I keep doing this until my genitals don't work anymore, and I lose interest. So, honestly, tell me money can't buy you love. I don't know. But do they really love you, Donald? I don't know. They love me as much as anybody else has ever loved me in my experience. Yeah, and I guess that's the problem. Maybe you don't have the experience to understand that there might be other measures of success. But enough about Donald Trump. Neither does anybody else actually, know the difference either. I mean, some people say they do, but they're all wrong, I guess. Money is the answer. So these guys that were so rich for doing next to nothing, they didn't believe that they were doing next to nothing. And maybe they're not. I'm sure their job is harder than I think it is, but it's not harder than I could handle. I think you can basically learn enough about finance, just like nuclear missiles, in an hour and a half to do the job reasonably well. And yeah, I guess it's sort of like the same conceit, but compare not the results, but compare compare the stakes, I guess, right? If I can't learn everything there is about financialization and of everything in the world, and given the opportunity, pull a reasonable, salary on Wall Street, given the opportunity, if you can clear all the barriers, pretty much anybody. I mean, hey, you saw Trading Places, right? Come on. I mean, it's a scientific documentary, I think. anybody can make a decent living, if not necessarily be a titan of Wall Street, because the system's rigged in favor of the people who are actors there. It's very difficult to lose money in a way that leaves you personally destitute in the financial industry. You might not succeed to, and rise to the highest levels where you can make the most money, but it's very hard to consider yourself a failure, I would think. But within that narrow band, there's great success and then there's failure. You fail in finance means you only make, couple $100,000 a year, I guess. Anyway, by their measure, they're working hard. They get up every day. They do things, whatever. Some of them are hard, but some of them are not. But whatever it is that they do, those are their things, and they do them as best they know how, and gosh, it feels like I'm busy all the time. But they really thought they were working harder than anybody else, including the president, because they had more money coming in as income, as salary, whatever, than the president did. And that's the metric that matters. So even if it didn't, deep down somewhere you think to yourself, I don't know if that's really as hard as being president. On the other hand, there is the objective measure of money, and I have more of it than they do, right? So, I was saying, by the way, about the stakes of failure, right? If you screw up as a finance guy, it's really not so bad. And really, honestly, nobody gets terribly hurt. You can screw up huge and hurt other people by betting their money and losing it. That's true. But you yourself aren't going to do too badly. And also, in the end, people lose money. Whereas, if, for instance, if you can't learn all there is to learn about nuclear missiles in an hour and a half, and then you go and you screw up nuclear non-proliferation negotiations, well, everybody in the world could die. Probably, maybe you'll survive because you have a bunker, but the whole world will really totally suck afterwards, and everybody's going to blame you, and it's really going to be terrible. There are many more things at stake in the presidency than the financial world, but those guys also have probably convinced themselves that if the finance industry goes down, so does the whole world. They said as much. They told us they were going to punish us by going galt, and then we'd all learn our lesson by watching the world go down the toilet. We know they believed that they were what made the world go around. They weren't kidding about money making the world go around. And they were right, and they knew where they were right because they had proof in the form of having more money than the rest of us. And after all, in the free market, we also learned this in business school, right? You actually literally cannot be getting that much more money than the rest of us unless you really are worth it, unless you really are working that hard, right? So all the proof you need is right there in capitalism. Everything tells you you're smarter, you're better, you're working harder. So, like them, here is Trump, who has convinced himself that borrowing money and wriggling your way out of debt by not paying anybody and shedding your companies through bankruptcy, and then later on licensing your brand name based on your reality show, or even worse, laundering dirty money for Russians. All of this means he's rich, quote unquote rich. He's got access to capital, and he's able to buy gold toilets and ride around in a limousine and a helicopter and airplanes and everything. So it must be true that he's rich. Oh, by the way, speaking of survival bunkers, Bill says, who has several huge survival bunkers? The Walmart family. Good friends to have when the bomb drops next week. Probably a good, and you know what's even better is it's well stocked, probably with all the basics. And at such low prices, too. And in fact, I'm not even certain that Walmart supercenter that opened near you isn't one of those bunkers. That might be the real scam here. We all thought that they were retail stores. They're actually just survival bunkers. Each member of the Walmart family and designated friends and relatives gets one Walmart as a survival bunker. The whole thing just sinks into the ground and trap doors close over it, and that's what the plan is for the end of the world. That's what all the digging was underneath all of the Walmarts. It's not Jade Helm. It's an elevator system to sink it subterranean levels, and then you live with all the water and vitamins and chewing gum and trading cards and all the great things that you can buy at Walmart, plus TVs, etc. I don't really know whether they'll do you any good post-apocalypse, but they're there, and you can sell them to other people who don't know that they won't do you any good. So there is that. And you thought they were in retail. They were just outfitting their bunkers. Anyway, so here comes Trump, who has convinced himself that his system of stringing together cash or cash flow or near proxies of cash, in other words, waving the air of wealth at people and having them agree to turn it into what is essentially a line of credit so they can continue to live his crazy-ass lifestyle, that he looks at and says, that's got to be valued at, you know how he does things, depending on how I feel today, $3, $5, $8, $10 billion. I'm a billionaire. I'm rich. And by comparison, you know, well, what about being president of the United States? Do you think you could do that? My first instinct is to say it's probably a pretty hard job, but let's get serious. Honestly, what does the job pay? I guess we're gonna have to go into the voice here. What does the job even really pay? What, it's like $400,000 a year, right? $400K a year. Think about that. I mean, I'm making a tremendous amount of money, considerably more than that, obviously. I mean, honestly, $400,000 I drop on a bar tab, and I don't even drink. I mean, just for friends, right? So, if you think about it, a $400,000 job has got to be, it's just free market economics. It's just true. It's got to be a lot easier than the job I do. I mean, my job is, conservatively speaking, right? Conservatively speaking, 10 times harder than a $400,000 a year job and a government job at that. How easy is that? Am I right? I mean, government jobs it's the easiest work you can get. You can't screw anything up. So a $400,000 a year government job should be a vacation for me, which, by the way, explains exactly what I'm doing, right? Oh, Trump, let's all complain. Let's all protest. Trump is taking another vacation. He's going to Mar-a-Lago again, which, by the way, is the winter White House. I'm going to work. I'm just commuting to a different office, right? I've got a different branch office in Florida. That's all it is. That's all, because I'm working hard there. Anywhere I go, I'm working hard. And you can tell that's true because I'm earning so much more. To be honest, I'm earning more money than you are. And that only happens. It only happens when you're working harder than the rest. You have to, I bust my hump every day. That's how come I'm so rich. That's the way it works. And so, that's why he's on vacation all the time, because he needs to rest from working so hard at this job. So, okay, here he agrees to say, I'm going to be, president, or I can wing it anyway. If I happen to win the election, it's only a $400,000 a year government job. Michael Musson actually says he remembers one of the Trump sons saying something quite like that being president was a step down, but he was willing to make the sacrifice. That is to say, I mean, a step down in prestige, perhaps, in his mind, plus money, plus, so that means success, and therefore the measure of himself, the dollars available are considerably less, but he would be willing to do the job anyway. And it must be easier anyhow. So it's not such a terrible trade. Now, Trump himself also told us right to our faces in the debates, as I tweeted last night, one of his key methods of managing his wealth is, of course, gaming his taxes, by which I mean not paying any. And he looked right at Hillary Clinton and right at the camera and said, that makes me smart. That's how I know I'm smart. I don't pay taxes, and that leaves me with more wealth. That equals being smart. So it's not hard for him to come to the conclusion that, one, this was going to be an easy job, and two, that he's smart enough, in fact, not only smart enough to do the job, he's so smart that taking this job, which is traditionally done by relatively dumb people, on was going to be easy. And like we were supposed to understand from his line in the debate, it's not just a smart thing to do to avoid as much taxation as possible because it keeps more money in your pocket. That wasn't necessarily what he meant by it makes him smart. He meant it literally makes him smart. It doesn't, educate him. It means it establishes him as objectively smart, because having money is the result of smarts. They said so right in whatever, I don't know, in business school. I assume they didn't actually teach that outright at Wharton, but that's the upshot of what we teach our finance students, our MBA students. Now, more money equals you've done a better job. You are smarter. You worked harder. The end. Money is the proof in itself that he or anyone who has it is smart. And if he claims, as we contend, that he has more money than most people or almost everybody in the world, that must clearly mean he's the smartest guy there is. The end. That's the logic. So then I was wondering, the thread goes on from there. And I thought this was a diversion of sorts, but I thought this was worth pointing out too. What evidence is there to the contrary in Donald Trump's life that might lead him to question the money equals smart equation? And there is none. Right? There's nothing that has ever happened in his life that might lead him to say, now he may know for personal politics purposes, the political correctness type of politics, the everyday politics of dealing with people and not having them want to stab you in the face, is to say, you say things like, well, money isn't everything, or, at least you have your health, or, whatever throwaway line you have to say. And of course, nobody believes it less than when it's said by Donald Trump that money isn't everything. It's easy for him to say, and he doesn't believe it. But in Donald Trump's life, if he thinks critically about his life at all, I suppose the occasional critical thought or self-deprecating thought might come to him in the form of ways that are actually subtle, backhanded confirmations of how smart he is. I'm so smart that when I decided I was going to write a book, because I heard there was money in writing books, even though I then pledged to give all of that money away to charity, I decided not to do that, I did do that. I did fulfill my pledge. I gave all my money to a fantastic charity, Donald J. Trump Foundation, and I fulfilled my promise, and I continued to live high on the hog based on that those charitable donations. I just used it to pay for my lifestyle, which is okay because of how smart I am. The fact that I engineered it such that all that money would, one, be considered charitable contributions, and two, come back to me nonetheless, is that not smart? Let's see you try and pull that off. I don't think you can do it, quite frankly. So, not a surprise, really. He was able to engineer everything in his life in such a way that it would bring money back to him, no matter whether he really thought he did a particularly good job about it on honest self-reflection or not. I heard there was good money in books. I want to get some of this money. So I wrote a book, and I didn't even write the book. I hired another guy to write the book, and the deal was, he said, I didn't know how a ghostwriter would work at writing the book. I just figured he was going to hang around and maybe rattle some chains or something, and then it would be like a Christmas Carol, but it wasn't. It was different. He came and he interviewed me, and I love to talk about myself. It was fantastic. All I did was I tell them all the stories about my life, the numerous women who love to have sex with me, and the money that has been so important in my life, and everybody's fascinated by the money. Let's be honest. Everyone wants to know about what it's like to crap on a gold toilet. Everyone wants to know what it's like to own a palace like Mar-a-Lago. And I'm willing to tell them in exchange for money. So this was a fantastic deal for me as far as I could tell. And so really though, when it got right down to it, when the book was done and they gave me a copy and I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? I guess I'm supposed to read it. And I couldn't do it. And it's okay. Most people thought it would be okay if I didn't finish reading my own book because you wrote the book. So it's not like there's going to be a book report like there used to be in school. So I didn't read the book. But other people did read the book. And it occurred to me, though, I remember some of the things that I told the writer that I wanted included in the book, and they did get into the book. And upon reflection, when I really look back at it, I realized I wasn't telling anybody anything at all. Here's the book called The Art of the Deal. And I think I gave maybe a paragraph or something to the idea of one of the things you want to be able to do in a deal that you go in there and you're a total killer. You just knock the crap out of the other guy and you make as much money as you can. That's what I think you should do in a deal. And it's good advice. It's not very specific, I know. And also, but if I told people really how to do deals like I did, then there wouldn't be any money left for me. They'd all be billionaires, and what would be left for me? So I didn't want to give away the store. But basically, I wrote a book that was about whatever the hell I thought of saying on any given day to this ghostwriter. And if you read his account of things, it was crazy. It was boring as hell. I never told him anything interesting. He had to sew together the whatever patchwork of an interesting book there might be. It made me look terrible. Of course, he's attacking me the whole time, even though I'm paying him ungodly sums of money to write this book. He's still not happy because he's a selfish prick. And anyway, the book's about me. So I thought I was having a great time. I'm telling him stories. You know I love to tell stories. I would just tell him different stories all the time, every day. And then he turned it into a book. And so in the end, if I'm honest about it, I don't know what the hell's in this book. Nothing. It's a book about nothing. It's all whatever I felt like saying for 10 days in a row. Now it's a book. Look what happened. Look at what happened. Look at what the free market did with the book-length compilation of my stories about whatever the hell occurred to me on any given day before I gave up and went to play golf, right? It's a bestseller. It's been on the bestseller list for 11,000 years. Literally, 11,000 years. Longer than any other book has ever been on the bestseller list. Longer than there have even been books, if you think about it, quite frankly. I don't know how many people know this, but cavemen did not have books. So, since the dawn of time, no book has been more popular than The Art of the Deal, with the possible exception, I know a lot of people take this very personally and they're very much attached to this particular book, but possibly my second book maybe sold more copies. So basically, at this point, based on sales, raw sales, I should also probably be Pope, because more people live by the religion of what I say than by the religion of what Jesus says, right? And no wonder he didn't have any money. That's why he's a gardener, and I'm an American icon, right? Okay, anyway, so basically, I wrote a book about whatever the hell I felt like talking about, and no one can get enough of it. They can't stop buying it. What does that mean? What could that possibly mean but that I'm the smartest guy in the world? Not only do I make money from it, which is objective proof of how smart it was to write the book, but on top of it, who else but the smartest guy in the world could effortlessly just dictate a book that becomes an all-time bestseller? Nobody. You would have to be a smart guy to do that. Proof positive. I'm the smartest guy in the world. Then, right, I decided eventually I'm going to run for president. So I did. I put my mind to it, and it was done. And what did I tell people on the campaign? You all read it. You saw me. It's all on videotape. Nothing. Whatever I felt like saying on any given day, I just said. No speechwriters. Didn't need them. Did not need a speechwriter. I've hired some just in case. Occasionally you want to give a speech that sounds, I don't know, conventional, presidential, what have you. And sometimes you have to fill airtime, like I'm doing right now. And it helps to have some words written down. I can't read them. It's very unclear on one of those teleprompters. But occasionally, just as a crutch, you want to have some words written down. So I hired a guy. Big deal. Most of my best speeches, just off the cuff, whatever I felt like saying. And what happened? I won. The presidency became mine. I bought it. I acquired it fair and square. Some people don't think so. But I acquired the presidency in a hell of a deal. I spent very little money, considering the amount of power that goes along with this job, as easy as it is. And I won the presidency. And how did I do it? Just by doing what I like to do best. I got up on stage, I told people whatever I thought of, and everybody clapped, and I won the presidency. Didn't even think for a moment about what the hell I was doing, or what I might do if I won the presidency. Proof of that is, of course, I've gotten in and I haven't done anything, and I haven't appointed anybody to office. I have no idea who to send, and I got no idea what I want my policies to be. But the point is, I asked for the presidency. They said, make some speeches, and if we like them, we'll give you the presidency. I made some speeches. I didn't hire anybody else to do it, right out of my own brain. And then, boom, a couple months later, I'm president of the United States. Again, I challenge you to tell me why that means something other than I just must be the smartest guy in the world. And if that's not enough for you, because you think that the Russians cheated for me or something and that I won the election because of that, look at the other thing. For instance, does anybody think that the Russians cheated for me in helping build my clothing line? My beautiful, so beautiful, by the way, Donald J. Trump branded shirts and ties. Nobody, as far as I know, even alleges that Russia had anything to do with that, right? And yet, huge success. Huge success. And what did I offer people? White shirts and plain red ties. I like that. I mean, that happens to be my personal style. And so obviously I'm going to emulate that. Plain red ties, white dress shirts. $1 million seller. How could that be? Most other people, right? They would start a tie company and they would say, I will have some original design. I will use an unusual color or some sort of pattern on it. I will use some sort of decoration on the shirt. Not necessary if you are the smartest guy in the world. A tie company that sells plain red ties, best-selling ties in the world, in the history of the world, including the cavemen who did have ties, by the way. I don't know how many people know that. But archaeologists are finding more and more ties are becoming more and more known among caveman societies these days. And I don't know if everybody knows that. Frederick Douglass, caveman, had one himself. And this was even before I thought of the idea, which really just shows the inherent smarts of plain red tie, classic white shirt. It'll never go out of style. It'll never stop making me money. Why did everybody want to buy the Donald Trump plain white shirt and plain red tie? And the answer is they wanted to emulate me. They wanted to look like me because they wanted to be as smart as me. Everyone wanted it on my smarts because they thought it would bring them success and wealth. And it has, in the sense that they now have those ties. That's pretty successful. And so that's about as objective a measure as I could possibly offer you. And I'm a little tired. Objective was a huge word, very difficult to say. It occurs to me now that I speak very much more like my own 1980s self when I'm on this show. It's like I've recovered my wits. This is far too complex a speech for me to have been giving during, let's say, the past election. But it doesn't matter because I'm so damn smart. All right. So, as smart as I am, I know that there are people out there who don't believe it. They think to be honest, they think I'm dumb. They literally think I'm too stupid to be president of the United States. even though it's an easy job. All these people see what I've been doing for a living, the way I've been making money, and they think I'm not rich. That's the amazing thing. I can't figure that out because, as you know, I've got limousines, I've got planes, more than one, by the way, beautiful planes. I've got a helicopter, probably one of the most beautiful privately owned helicopters in the world, and I've been in a lot of them, and I've even been in now Marine One, which is the presidential helicopter, and I can tell you my helicopter measures up pretty good. I think Marine One, if I'm honest, is actually a nicer helicopter than I had, but I will say this, not by that much, but it's pretty nice. They maintain it pretty well, that's good. It's a lot cheaper for me to use because it's free. So there's that. That definitely raises the status of Marine One in my mind. Anyway, got planes, got a helicopter, and I've had more than one. As a matter of fact, I own a palace. I don't know if anybody knows that, but Mar-a-Lago, the original intent of Mar-a-Lago, when it was built by King James I, I believe, was to have a winter palace in the New World. And now I own that, and that's my palace. And I own that, and I own several others. A Golden Tower, of course, I have several of them in New York. I could move from tower to tower to tower because I own so many fantastic properties. But, and I'm very proud, by the way, and I know it's radio, and so I don't want to, be too untoward for morning hours, but I own several actual gold toilets. I like to drop the kids off at a golden pool. Can we say that on the radio? Is that okay? I like to crap on a gold toilet, is what I'm trying to say, just to be straightforward about it. To make fun of the fact that the rest of the people in the world don't even have money. Like if I gave one of my gold toilets to you, you would melt it down and use it as money because it's gold. I don't even need it. I crap on it. That's what I'm trying to say with my gold toilets. All of these things, though, are meant to show one thing, that I am smart. I think you thought I was going to say it proves that I'm rich. And it does prove that I'm rich, obviously. But what I mean is it proves that I'm smart because I told you at the outset, smart and rich are the same thing. You cannot get to be this rich. You can't get gold toilet crapping rich and be an idiot. It's just not possible. You will lose somewhere along the way and probably have to, at best, settle for like a copper toilet or something like that. I imagine that's what dumb people crap on is copper toilets. Although copper is becoming more and more expensive these days. So, interesting play. So if a long time ago, if you made the smart move to invest in a copper toilet when you were dumb and poor, you're probably rich right now. So there you go. The economy is working for you, and that's because of me. People have more confidence in the economy, more confidence in the precious metals in which they crap, because they believe that finally we've brought a businessman's sensibilities to the White House. A businessman is what it takes to recognize that the presidency is easy. It turns out it's harder than I thought, but it's still relatively easy. For instance, I'm still in it. So there you go. I think that should probably prove it. So anyway, my supporters are surprised, and they believe me that they believe me when I tell them, for instance, that any news that says that I'm dumb or not as smart as I have, as the objective proof, it's not even a matter of what I claim. The objective proof is I'm sitting on a pile of billions of dollars. I'm literally leaving another pile on a golden toilet at any given moment. That's how rich I am. And as we know, again, rich equals smart. So I'm the smartest guy in the world at this point. And there are other people out there who are saying, no, he's not smart. In fact, he's not even rich. All of those things, all of those golden toilets that he has, borrowed money. It's other people's money. And I say, yeah, it is. Sue me. You won't win. And if you do, I'll appeal and then I won't pay you. But the point is that the money is in my hands. You think I'm not rich? You think this is really all other people's money? If I'm not the smartest guy in the world, why are other people letting me literally take dumps on their money? Why? Why would you do that? You don't want poo on your money. I know that. I'm smart. You're smart. You're probably smart enough to know you don't want fecal contamination on your money. You don't want that. It's not good. You do not want to have that happening. And yet people can't give me enough gold to poop on. I have to keep building new toilets just for the fun of it. It's no longer exciting for me now. I can't actually move my bowels unless I get a brand new toilet every once in a while just to keep things exciting at home. You know what I mean? And if I am not as smart as I think I am, and as smart really in your heart as you know I am, I can't get more of these borrowed toilets to feed my habit, as it were. I won't have the palace. I won't have the gold toilets. I won't have the airplanes unless I'm smart. So, once again, I've proven it to be true. And if you feel like this is all going around in circles, you're finally starting to catch on. So, I know I'm rich because I've got these things. Even if they're borrowed things, even if I've stolen them, even if they're paid for with Russian mobster money. The point is, I have them. It's my Donald Trump butt that gets to do all of this stuff on a gold toilet and not yours. That's the real point. So I'm not concerned about whether or not I'm borrowing money. I'm not concerned about whether I'm just laundering money. I'm concerned about, can I use the money for shiny crappers? All of you who are saying I'm not smart, you're the ones who are lying. And my supporters know it. They woke up this morning and they said, another lie, another news, quote unquote, news report, fake news. It's fake. Saying the man's not smart. The man's not rich and the man's not smart. I can look at the guy and see he's rich. He's covered in golden things. The curtains in the White House have turned to gold because he touched them. They turned to gold. He has a gold toilet, which we've discussed extensively at this point. And I could go on if you need me to, but I don't think you do. So I'll stop there with the toilet. Limousines, helicopters, palaces, airplanes, fabulous beauties to marry and otherwise enjoy. He's got the best looking daughters. He's got very wealthy sons. So it's all working out for him. How can you possibly say, for you liberals and critics and haters and losers, to stand there and say, he's not rich, Donald Trump isn't rich? Anybody with eyes can see, I am. That's how they know that you're fake news. So when I tell them it's fake news, not only do they believe it, they say, Donald Trump, you were the first person to tell me this was fake news. I believe it now. At first I wasn't sure. I thought, how could they be printing fake news and stay in business? Surely they couldn't, because fake news is dumb news. How could they be in business? And I tell you, it doesn't even matter. Fake news, if people read it and believe it, unfortunately, it makes money. It doesn't prevent you from making money, just faking the news. So, I told them you were fake. They didn't believe me. Then they looked and they saw the gold toilet. There it is again. And that's it. That's the end of it. He is rich. And the conclusion that they're going to draw from that is, you really are fake news. Liberals really are liars. They really are only saying this because they hate Donald Trump. That's the only reason. Michael Musson, thank you very much for reminding me. If I keep going with this, my voice may be stuck this way. And I think that's probably what happened. Let's see if we can climb out of the Donald Trump for a little bit. It's not necessary to the rest of this thing. But, I'm sure we've belabored the point at this stage. But I honestly, I don't think you can discuss this for long enough. It may not be something you want to do in public for an hour or more. But I think this really explains an awful lot about the way he is and about the way he works. So it's I think that's the bottom line. And I think that's why you'll see today and the weekend shows. I mean, I think Sunday shows will actually end up being, as outrageous as this sounds now, about why Donald Trump really won the weekend with this stupid interview in which he says he thought the presidency was going to be easy and that he was totally unprepared for assuming its duties. It will somehow still end up being a win for him, just like it was a big win that, what was the other thing that happened this week that Armando was so amazed about that Chris Salitza says was a win? Oh yeah, losing in court on the sanctuary cities thing. It's a huge win. It's a big gift to Donald Trump. Anyway, so it's really pretty incredible that all this stuff went on last night, and I guess it's also supposed to be a huge distraction from something, and it may be because, P.S., there might be a nuclear war this weekend. Not that anybody in the Senate knows anything about it because they all went to the briefing and learned nothing whatsoever, including what the president has in mind for our future with a nuclear standoff with Korea. What's the point of trying to straighten all of that out? Anyway, don't worry about it because he's totally smart and he can't make any mistakes. Thanks to the fact that, he's got, at a minimum, got control of enough other people's money that 50% of the country will look at you like you're crazy if you say he's not really rich. I mean, it's a point that me and Armando have been making for a long time. He's just not as rich. That's probably half the reason or more why he will not show his tax returns. We would be able to figure that out. But I don't really know what the danger is. Maybe he could be convinced this way. Show your tax returns. Liberals will say you're not really rich. And you can say, you give the whole same speech again. Gold toilet, planes, palaces. Tell me I'm not rich. Go ahead. Tell me to my face I'm not rich. Tell your neighbor to his face that you don't think I'm rich. And he'll be convinced. It's probably the best thing that could happen is for liberals to pick a public fight and try to show that something objectively shows that Donald Trump isn't rich. Probably do more damage to us than anything else. And I suppose if we could convince him of that, then maybe he'd show us his tax returns. I don't know. I guess the other possibility is that he can't release his tax returns. Have we considered this? That he just never filed any? That he just didn't prepare any? And didn't file any? I mean, do we think that that's possible? It's hard to imagine how you make that work because you would think that would be kind of an open and shut case. Your Honor, the guy never filed anything, and that's totally wrong. I don't know. I suppose that's a possibility. I'll have to consider that. Talk to a tax lawyer about that. What if he can't show his tax returns because they don't exist? I mean, why couldn't he mock some up? He couldn't just make up some nonsense and say that was his tax return? I don't know. Unsure. Anyway, I'm certain there were more things that I needed to tell you before the weekend came, and we still have an hour to do it. So let's move as quickly as possible on to some of these other things and fill you in. Let's see. Where shall we start with these things? No, not there. Although that's an interesting piece. Maybe we need to keep that open for later. Let's see. I'll run down what we have here for you in pocket. Something that Armando shared with me this morning. Just going to perhaps read the headline and maybe a little bit of it. It's a Michael Grunwald piece in Politico magazine, which we'll bring it up for evidence that we call it right on this show. There's probably lots of evidence that we call many other things wrong. But this part was right. Trump's executive orders are mostly theater, says Michael Grunwald. The president knows how to stage a photo op, but so far his signature hasn't changed much. And yes, Armando was happy with pointing that one out because we said it maybe even a little bit prematurely. But we were looking at the Obamacare repeal / undermining via the regulatory route. One of the early executive orders from, I think, like early February, where he was just directing secretaries of the various cabinets to do whatever they could to minimize the impact of the disaster that was Obamacare. And we realized, all this is a directive to secretaries to say, use the powers you already have to make decisions in ways that will minimize the effectiveness of Obamacare. And we knew that they could do that, and he was just reminding them that they could, but making out like this was a huge accomplishment, because that's all he can get done, because Congress can't pass anything else. So that set the stage. We knew it after one executive order. Michael Grunwald appears to have done the actual work necessary to say with real confidence that his executive orders are mostly theater across the board, whatever the executive orders are. And he's signed, he thinks, a record number of them. Of course, you remember when that was a bad thing. But for him, it's a huge accomplishment to have signed the most executive orders, even though they don't do anything in particular. And he starts out with the same one, I guess, as we did. President Donald Trump signed his first executive order on his first day in the White House, taking aim, I guess it was in January then, at his predecessor's signature achievement. Trump signs executive order to roll back Obamacare, Forbes reported. He's gone on to sign more executive orders in his first 100 days than any president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and his aides, critics, and the media alike have portrayed them as dramatic assaults on the status quo. Trump moves to roll back Obama-era financial regulations in the New York Times. Trump executive order will undo Obama's Clean Power Plan in USA Today, et cetera, et cetera. But as Grunwald points out, 99 days into his presidency, Trump's high-profile orders have not actually undone Obama's health reforms, financial regulations, or carbon restrictions. Not that it won't have an impact, not that it won't be damaging, not that it isn't it wouldn't have been preferable for him not to do these things. But what Grunwald is discovering is that they mostly have no teeth to them, and they are mostly directing people to investigate what the hell those things are and report back to him about how they can minimize their impact. And then maybe later he'll actually do something about executing those things to minimize the impact. But basically all he's doing is signing things, and that's why he keeps showing them to the press. So it looks like there's action going on, despite the fact that nothing is going on. So I thank you, Michael Grunwald, for doing the grunt work of actually reading the rest of them to verify that they're all pretty much the same as the read that Armando and I and others gave to the healthcare one. All right, let's see. Greg wanted me to point this one out too, and many of you have likely seen this, and we salute the creative folks out there who have been a part of this. He sent me the Hills write-up of it, but a big story all over the place. People are reporting extraterrestrial sightings to Trump's new criminal alien hotline. Remember the voice thing that they said they were going to set up? They wanted people to be able to have a government hotline to report when they thought, as they like to call them, illegal aliens were committing crimes. And of course, they're trying to keep statistics on all of that so they can prove that aliens are terrible. So, okay, people took them at their word, and they've been calling and jamming the line with reports about extraterrestrial aliens. And apparently they're unhappy about this. But I salute the creativity out there. And if you do the call right, I assume they can't really prosecute you for it. You said aliens, and this is what I thought you meant. I honestly believed that that's what you wanted to report about. And besides which, those guys don't have documents. I mean, you can, if you can be an illegal alien and come here from Mexico, which is, after all, North America, and you move from one part of North America to another, even though we have a NAFTA trade agreement, we don't have a free movement of people agreement, which is supposed to be part and parcel of free trade, but we left that part out because Brown. But if you move from one part of North America to another, and sometimes just a few feet, you can be an illegal alien. It has to be the case that coming from another planet without documentation will likewise make you an illegal alien. I think you can make it stand up in court. Good luck. I hope it works out for you. But yes, salute to the creatives out there who have come up with this idea, and many more. All right. So let's see. What else can we go to? There's a million other things here, including, more things about how dumb Trump is, because now we're doing think pieces about how he thinks that the presidency was supposed to be easy. there's much more reporting. I don't think we can catch up. We need to do like a whole episode one day of Sebastian Gorka stories. But I think the latest one that looks like it has the ability to bring him down is the word that's coming out. Apparently he loves to go around bragging about his PhD. He loves to have people call him Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Apparently you can't bring people down by pointing out that they're Nazis. And they've done this even more effectively for Gorka than they have for Bannon. Bannon just has Nazi tendencies. Gorka likewise has Nazi tendencies, but in addition, he's apparently he's open and notorious about his membership in certain weirdo Hungarian societies, which had as their origins, anti-communist, but also chiefly pro-Nazi and Nazi collaborators, among their founders and among their chief purpose, at the founding of these organizations. And I guess he's particularly proud of apparently his father's participation in one of these societies, which he himself portrays as having chiefly been about being anti-communist. P.S. they were also Nazi collaborators because that's the way the politics broke down in those days. So he thinks that the Nazism is an afterthought in all of this, and he hopes you'll think so too. But apparently it's actually considerably more central to what he's about. But it doesn't matter because you can't purge people from the White House for Nazism. That hasn't worked yet. But we have been able to, at least nominally, purge people from the White House if it's found out that they've been faking their credentials. So there is that. And I think, was BuzzFeed the first one to put together one of these more comprehensive compilations of all this. As he writes here, the Hungarian rise and fall of Sebastian Gorka. Apparently this is something he tried in Hungary first. I don't know whether, is he Hungarian born, Gorka? I'm not even sure. But apparently he thought it would be easier to rise to the top of Hungarian politics than United States politics. I would have guessed the same, I guess, initially, based on nothing. Because I also note that somewhere in these stories, or someone pointed out the other day, that Gorka, should probably not have a security clearance to begin with, because he's a huckster, and his credentials are fake. You can give credentials, you can give a security clearance to somebody who doesn't have any credentials if you want to, but faking your credentials makes you a suspicious character. Probably you're not going to pass your background check. But apparently, word got out also that he failed to win a security clearance in Hungary. He could not pass muster for a Hungarian security clearance, and everybody scoffed at that, including me. And then I sort of realized immediately, well, what does that even mean? That guy couldn't even get a security clearance in Hungary, and everybody knows that Hungary sucks at security. Maybe they're really fantastic. I feel bad about that. Sorry, Hungary. Anyway, the Hungarian rise and fall of Sebastian Gorka, which also later led to a report by Think Progress, writing about the BuzzFeed investigation, says BuzzFeed finds an alleged snake oil peddler in the White House. And maybe we can get rid of you as a snake oil peddler, if not as a Nazi. So we should take a look at the BuzzFeed version of it and see if we can give you an encapsulated or an abbreviated look at what this is all about. And then one day we'll dive a little further into Sebastian Gorka. But this is actually datelined Budapest. So how do you like that? They're sending people to Budapest for BuzzFeed. Sebastian Gorka, who's a gun failer, by the way. You'll all recall that. Sebastian Gorka, a national security aide and all-around Donald Trump attack dog, failed his way upwards to the White House, having been denied security clearance to work in the Hungarian parliament, having been defeated in a local mayoral race in the 2000s, and widely being dismissed as an opportunist. Gorka, a deputy assistant to the president who focuses on counterterrorism, was denied security clearance in 2002 to serve on a committee investigating the then Hungarian prime minister's past as a communist secret police official during Soviet times. That denial, local security officials and politicians told BuzzFeed News, effectively ended his career as a national security expert in Hungary. Who would have thought that if you couldn't make it in Hungary, you could make it in the United States? But that's the way our media market works, I guess. Media, this is your fault. Washington, I don't know. I just said it. Washington's standards may be lower than Budapest's, it turns out. Gorka has been widely criticized for his lack of qualifications and connections with fringe political groups since joining the Trump administration. In the past few months, his ties with far-right Hungarian groups and past as an editor of Breitbart News have raised questions about both his ideological views and his judgment. But back in Hungary in the 2000s, he wasn't seen as an extremist, but instead a self-promoter who exaggerated claims about his past, including his work for the British intelligence services. Sebastian Gorka is not a Nazi or a security threat because he's some sort of secret British agent, is what the Hungarian counterintelligence service said. They reviewed the files, a security background check on Gorka provided in 2002. Gorka is, how do you say in English, a peddler of snake oil. The White House, of course, didn't respond to any of this, and neither did Gorka. But Gorka's rise offers a glimpse of how permeable the top strata of American power is in the age of Trump. It seems to be easier to rise in the Trump White House than it was in the newly free Hungarian government, which really should have been the Wild West at that point, right? Than it was in the newly formed newly free Hungarian government at the turn of the century. That old phrase being brought back to haunt us now. The Trump administration is full of figures like Gorka, plausible TV talking heads with no particular expertise. His wafer-thin counterterrorism resume, associations with the political fringes in Hungary, and questions about the depth of his experience are a particularly vivid illustration of what it takes to get the ear of a president famous for adopting the view of the last person with whom he spoke. Gorka, born in 1970 in the UK, there's the answer, to Hungarian parents, immigrated to Hungary in the early 1990s after graduating from Haythorpe College at the University of London with a degree in philosophy and theology. Fantastic degree, I'm sure. While the exact timeline of his activities in Hungary remains opaque, Gorka joined a flood of expats heading for Hungary after the collapse of the communist regime in 1989. He embarked on a career as a national security expert, working as a low-level staffer at the Defense Ministry, attempting to form defense-based think tanks, and working as a minor pundit. But the attacks of September 11th, 2001 appear to have been a turning point, after which he tried to rebrand himself as an expert on, quote, Islamic terrorism. He then made a final attempt at a career in politics in Hungary, but was soundly beaten in a local election race, failing to become mayor of a small Hungarian town in 2006. Within 2 years, he had upped and left and immigrated to the U.S. From there on, it was onwards and upwards to the White House. In 2002, when Gorka tried to make a real mark, and it was 2002 when he tried to make a real mark in Hungarian national security world, then Prime Minister, Hungarian names here, Peter Medgyessy, I'm guessing, was suspected of having worked as a secret police officer in the communist era, and Gorka wanted to join a parliamentary committee that was investigating him, but he was rejected for a security clearance within weeks by Hungarian counterintelligence, who cited his repeated claims of contact with British intelligence as a security risk, according to former Hungarian foreign minister and intelligence agents familiar with his file. By the way, somewhere in pocket, among the files that I have so far ignored about Gorka, and I think we'll dig those up at some future date, is the analysis of somebody, I guess a blogger who actually has some real background in British intelligence and the British Armed Forces, analyzing the claims that he's made, and mostly finds them to be garbage. That he was perhaps attached to British intelligence at some point, but in no capacity that would in any way have prepared him as an expert in terrorism of any sort or counterintelligence of any sort, certainly not Islamic terrorism. It's just he ended up after September 11th hating Muslims more than most people he knew, and therefore styled himself a terrorism expert. Well, there's more in this BuzzFeed News investigation. Lots of exciting stuff, including some Instagram or Facebook sharing by Gorka of pictures of him in a goofy-looking British military garb, holding a what appears to be a assault weapon of some kind. Actually, it looks like an AK. Says here as a member of the British Territorial Army, and that was the basis, by the way, on which this British intelligence and military blogger took down his claims. Apparently, the British Territorial Army, which I guess to you and me sounds like it's a big deal, apparently not the same thing as actually being an operative in military intelligence or the British Army. I guess apparently it stands apart in some way. I'll see if I can dig that up. But we really should just spend a whole day on Gorka. But I wanted to at least acknowledge that there's that. And I guess one of the other stories about Gorka, and I don't know whether I put this one aside, much more specific, and it may have been reported in this BuzzFeed piece as well, that apparently his credentials as a PhD also in some question, because apparently somebody discovered that he defended his PhD, his doctoral thesis. I mean, that's the crux of whether or not you're really a PhD. Did you defend a thesis in an in a universally accepted way among academics? And the answer was no. Apparently, there was only one PhD holder on the board to whom he defended the thesis, the panel to whom he defended the thesis, and that it also consisted of friends and colleagues of his, as well as people otherwise unqualified to pass judgment on the quality of his thesis, and so really he ought not to have been awarded this degree in the first place. Let's see. Oh, is this it down here? I'm sort of scrolling down. Did they report on this? Well, they at least do say this. Gorka got his PhD in 2007 from Corvinus University in Budapest. That's not what disqualifies him. I'm sure it's a fine university. His dissertation on terrorism theory has since been widely criticized by experts in international terrorism for its vagueness and superficiality. Daniel Nexon, an associate professor of international security at Georgetown University, which we know about, wrote in a series of blog posts that the dissertation would not have been accepted in an American undergraduate program, much less a PhD. I would not characterize it as a work of scholarship, Nexon wrote. I am confident that it would not earn him a doctorate at any reputable academic department in the United States. Indeed, it would be unacceptable as an undergraduate thesis for the Department of Government or the School of Foreign Service at Georgetown. My guess is that Gorka wanted to call himself doctor, and his PhD granting institution was happy to oblige. So the specifics not in this one. I must have set it aside elsewhere. I just kind of wanted to put Gorka on the map because so much is happening. And then, and we may get to the point where if we finally dislodge him for having faked his credentials, we'll have missed our moment to mention that, the Gorka thing was going to come to a head fairly certain. And it feels like that. It's getting to that point. Although, perhaps we're being distracted by the fact that Donald Trump is now giving interviews in which he admits that he's totally unprepared for the presidency, and we're a little bit more intrigued by that than anything else at the moment. Okay, I wouldn't say you're badly distracted, though, if you were focusing on getting that Nazi out of the White House. Let's see. Another fun story that is going to carry us through in the weekend, and another one from out of BuzzFeed. This one will sound familiar because, of course, we've examined the fact that Trump Towers, as we've said, like the Mos Eisley of Earth, packed with scum and villainy of all sorts, is that's not news to us, but today's news is the report of, how do they characterize this? What's the convicted con artist of the winter White House? In other words, the alternative title of a piece by Tarini Parti in BuzzFeed, which is properly titled The House Mother and the Fraudster. In other words, it turns out Mar-a-Lago is as full of scumbags and con artists as Trump Tower is. And I don't even necessarily mean to be referring to Donald Trump. I mean, he's scumbag and con artist himself, but by some strange coincidence, it turns out that he surrounds himself in Trump Tower with scumbags and con artists and surrounds himself at Mar-a-Lago with scumbags and con artists. You just won't be surprised to hear it. You'll just appreciate the details. So, what do we got here? The subheader, I guess, tells most of the story. It's usually the case. Ari Rinkus is the name of the guy we're concerned with here. Convicted of 2 felonies, owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to his victims, and has a documented habit of lying. Should be vice president at this point. But he's got one big thing going for him, a wife with an important job at Donald Trump's favorite retreat. And Rinkus is playing that for all it's worth. Let's get the details. Dateline, West Palm Beach, Florida. I like that old-time journalisty press guy kind of voice. An admitted fraudster who owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to his victims and has access to President Donald Trump through his wife, not Trump's wife, who is the guest reception manager of Mar-a-Lago, the quote-unquote winter White House. It should be enclosed in scare quotes here, but it's not. Heather Rinkus is such a familiar figure at Mar-a-Lago that senior administration officials fondly call her the club's house mother. Her husband, Ari, is often on hand, too. There he was in February, waiting to greet President Trump in the special access area on the tarmac of Palm Beach International Airport, a few yards away from Air Force One. But it wasn't that long ago that Ari, whose real name is, for whatever reason, Anthony Donald Rinkus, pleaded guilty in federal court to felony wire fraud for a complex financial con job. The guilty plea came on the heels of a previous one in state court for conducting a car theft ring, but that just makes you Daryl Issa, so not a big deal. In fact, Rinkus was still on probation for his earlier crime when he stood to hear his sentence for the Ponzi scheme. That's not really a crime, though. Ponzi schemes, that's just finance. So, you know how it is. I can't imagine a worse combination of situations to be knowing that you just contracted a state felony. Contracted? Really? A state felony, that you're on probation for it, and then step into a whole new fraud. Federal Judge Robert Jonker said before he ordered Rinkus to serve 3 years behind bars. Now he's out of prison and on probation, though a gilded one. Through Heather's job, the Rinkuses get to witness up close the pageantry of the presidency. Well, this particular presidency, the pageantry is sort of a different thing here. It's a little smarmier. It's a deal Ari has said will become sweeter if Heather gets promoted to the club's managing director, a position he has told sources she's next in line for. You don't want to gossip ahead of that, but okay. Since his inauguration, Trump has already spent 7 weekends at the 20-acre club on the Atlantic Ocean, giving members who have paid more than $200,000 in fees a ringside seat on the inner workings of his administration. That is to say, ringside seats to nothing, but okay. It was here where Trump met with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, here where he was briefed on North Korea's test of a ballistic missile, and here where he ordered the bombing of Syria over a beautiful chocolate cake, the most beautiful chocolate cake you've ever seen. The Rinkuses are the gatekeepers to the winter White House, or at least Ari wants people to think so. This may be a bit of puffery going on here. Before she landed her job at Mar-a-Lago, Heather worked for one of the companies owned by the family of Betsy DeVos, the wealthy former chair of the Michigan Republican Party who is now Trump's education secretary. Ari, a stocky former used car salesman, great credentials, frequently holds court, believe it or not, over a vodka soda at a local bar, bragging about his and his wife's connection to Trump and his team while trolling for investors for business deals he's peddling. This sounds like a trustworthy guy. The tale of the Rinkus couple, one a repeat felon and the other a Trump employee who interacts regularly with top government officials, raises the curtain on the way the Trump sprawling business holdings can sweep minor figures into his political orbit. It is amazing. I like the political orbit thing. It is amazing how many of these scumbags there are in low Trump orbit. For a man with a serious criminal record, Ari Rinkus has been in remarkably close proximity to the president. Like, what's his name? The other one who stabbed the guy in the face with the broken margarita glass. The guy from the Trump Soho. Yeah, I can never bring everybody's name to mind. Which of the Russians is he? Somebody knows, and they can tweet it to me. Okay, for a man with a serious criminal record like that other guy, he's got remarkably close proximity to the president. He has parlayed that access, and the perception of access, I guess more importantly, to his own advantage, sources said, while pursuing potentially lucrative government contracts. Government contracts, wow, on behalf of a foreign company, no less. Here, a picture being tweeted by Heather Rinkus of her and Trump at a rally in Miami back in September of 2016. So proud, he says, to work for him and with his team. I don't know who else is in the picture, but she's the one immediately next to him. And, I guess without seeing the picture, though, you'll get a copy of a link to all of this in our afternoon post. Thank you very much, Scott. You'll be able to guess which one she is, and you'll be able to guess probably, you'll be able to take a pretty good stab at how she got hired. Let's put it that way. Reached this week, Heather Rinkus had no comment, and Ari, told what this story would contain, changed his account. He said that in his previous exchanges with BuzzFeed News, he had exaggerated his access to the president and his family. And he may have. I believe that. He told similarly inflated tales to other people, he said, but insisted that he had not done so to gain government contracts or seek investments. Raising money, he acknowledged, would violate the terms of his ongoing probation for the Ponzi scheme. So you see, that's how you know I didn't do it. The White House declined to comment, referring questions to the Trump Organization, amazingly enough, as if that was any better. The Trump Organization said it had no business relationship with either Heather or Ari Rinkus. Mar-a-Lago did not respond to emails and a phone message. I guess it's possible, technically speaking, that the Mar-a-Lago, the company that owns and operates Mar-a-Lago, owned by Trump, is, maybe only a subsidiary of the Trump Organization, or maybe even not a part of the Trump Organization at all. So that's a good one for the White House. Refer everything like that to the Trump Organization, only to have the Trump Organization say, no, that's some other Trump LLC, not us. Let's see. Earlier this month, Ari Rinkus arrived at Frigates, a bar that sits on a canal in North Palm Beach, in a black Chevy Suburban. It's a step down from the Bentley he used to drive. These guys remind me a lot of the what were their names? The Salahis, who were crashers at the White House when the Obamas, remember them. There's a whole world of these guys out there who just exist as grifters. And I mean, obviously the terminology is suggested to me by the subheader of this particular section, a grifter. But I mean, these guys that just exist on the margins, and they're such lucrative margins too, who are always hustling. That does make things to be, makes them think they're doing a lot of work. They're always sweating it out and hustling, but just, running from party to party. I mean, how hard is that? Pretending to be rich and getting people to give them scraps and driving around in a Bentley that they can barely manage to put together payments for, whatever, and telling everybody, oh, I'm super important. I'm like this with the president, or I'm the head of the United States Polo Association, or whatever the hell. All right. So it's a step down from the Bentley he used to drive, but the new car is part of his, quote, security job, he told BuzzFeed News. On his collar, he wore a pin emblazoned with the Secret Service logo, and Rinkus has a story to go with it. Now, I don't know what the story is. We'll go ahead and read it, but the real story, I would say, is probably that one time when he went with Heather to greet the president on the tarmac when Air Force One landed for one of his vacations to Mar-a-Lago. He got on the list for close proximity, so that meant the Secret Service gave him a pin, so he kept the pin, and that's why they keep changing the pins. They know which one is which day. The people who get pins way back when aren't able to just simply walk into the White House with one of those pins on. It's not a permanent fixture, but whatever. So he drives around in a black Chevy Suburban with a pin on that he got once because he needed to get access to a VIP area on the tarmac, and now he pretends he's in the FBI or whatever. All right. So he recently got pulled over by a young cop, he said, but after he handed over his driver's license and dared the cop to look him up, believe this guy? The cop returned, apologized, and let him off with just a warning. Rinkus laughed as he finished up the story. See how people are using these? They're actually trading on proximity to Trump to fix tickets. This is the pettiest, dirtiest kind of municipal corruption you can imagine, but happening at a national level. So the cop allegedly apologized. There's no reason, by the way, for a cop to have apologized at all, and there's really probably no real method by which someone as far out of the real Trump orbit as this guy, who at best, his wife works at Mar-a-Lago in an important position. That's not going to be in any police database. The possibility of this actually having happened this way, I would say, is next to zero. But he tells this story nonetheless because he's a liar and an idiot and a grifter. But anyway, the story is cop returns, apologizes, lets him off with just a warning. Rinkus laughed, and when asked if the cop let him off because he's affiliated with the Secret Service, he answers yes. Right. Pressed for more details on his role in the Secret Service, he says, I can't talk about that. But added that he didn't just find the pin lying around in the trash. Yeah, here's what happened. Like I said, he got on a list for a VIP area, and they identified him with a pin. They do that with everybody who gets into this area. Wear this pin today. That's how we'll know to let you beyond the ropes. Otherwise, we'll break your leg if you try to get in. Okay. Can I keep the pin? Yeah, we don't give a crap. We're going to give out new pins tomorrow. You think this is like special access pin? Have at it. More power to you. Enjoy yourself. Not too much in public, but whatever. So, he goes around now pretending he's in the Secret Service. Can you imagine this guy? Wow. But he's just one of dozens, hundreds probably, who hang around like this all the time. How many of these idiots in Trump Tower, Mar-a-Lago, and God knows where else has he put in a VIP area? There's probably thousands of these pins floating around and people trying to get out of traffic tickets with Secret Service pins. Amazing. Although it's probably always happening. But probably more now because they're just bolder grifters surrounding this particular president. Okay. A spokesman for the Secret Service said that because of the Privacy Act, it does not say who is or isn't an agent, but added that the agency does not hire convicted felons. He also said the pin Rinkus was wearing is occasionally handed out to members of the public as a goodwill gesture. An interesting way of putting it. Yes. As he sipped his vodka soda, Rinkus mentioned that his wife was busy setting up for the president's historic upcoming meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping at Mar-a-Lago. The cake, so beautiful. Rinkus frequently name drops the president, members of the first family, because he knows what they are. Let me try it. Ivanka, Don, Eric. There, I did it. I'm a genius too. Frequently name drops the president, members of the first family, and top White House staff, people who know him, he said. That evening at the bar was no different. He recently had dinner with Trump's son and daughter-in-law, Eric and Lara Trump. Salt of the earth, he said. Ivanka Trump, just like her father. Don Jr., he's a family-focused man. He knows them all, he stressed. Of course, that's like telling me what their horoscopes are. Or what's your Chinese fortune cookie say about this guy? 2 legs. Yeah, fantastic guy. Wears shoes. That sort of man. It's an unimaginable rise for a man that a federal prosecutor once described as a grifter who has participated in a series of fraudulent schemes and shady business deals in an attempt to get rich quick. Indeed, after a bankruptcy in 2000, that means he's rich, Rinkus's mortgage company, can you believe it? Paramount Capital 6-star diamond funding, failed to pay rent for several months. In 2005, his landlord sued, and Rinkus and a co-defendant were ordered to pay $77,485.64. But even after the court sent him a subpoena, Rinkus failed to appear in court and was found to be in contempt. Not long after that, in October 2006, Rinkus pleaded guilty to conducting a criminal enterprise, specifically the illegal possession and resale of stolen motor vehicles, which included 2 Cadillac Escalades, 2 BMWs, and a Hummer. And I'll bet a Bentley in there too. Maybe that explains things. Engaging in a pattern of racketeering activity, Rinkus and a co-defendant stole the cars from New York, changed their vehicle identification numbers, and sold them in Michigan, where he was living, court documents show. Rinkus struck a plea deal that spared him prison time. How? I don't know. These federal judges, they're activist judges, they coddle criminals. Anyway, he was put on probation for 5 years, ordered to pay nearly $80,000 in restitution, fines, and fees, but he barely paid any of that money. So in 2010, he was charged with violating the terms of his probation by failing to pay up and by having moved to Florida without authorization. He was afforded a great opportunity here by the court, being placed on probation rather than sent to prison. Rinkus's probation agent, Cheryl Burdo, said during the proceedings he has not taken his probation seriously. Rinkus's defense lawyer said he moved to Florida to get a job, presenting as evidence a letter from Christopher Anzalone, the CEO of a financial services firm, According to the letter, Rinkus' starting salary, $104,000. God damn it. Why do I even want to bother? All right. At his probation violation hearing, Rinkus was sentenced to prison for not making regular payments toward restitution. He got out after serving his federal time, but as recently as this January, ordered to appear back in state court for continuing to default on his payments. Rinkus said he was never served with that order. Court records show that he still owes 85% of the restitution and other payments related to his car theft crimes. Though he had moved to Florida, Rinkus kept ties to Michigan. Smart thing to do, so he could be rounded up. That's where a group of bogus hedge funds, collectively called the Atlas Fund, were based. They formed the basis of the Ponzi scheme. And to secure investments in the fraudulent funds, Rinkus pretended to have financial experience and promised, quote, an extraordinary return, unquote, through short-term, high-interest loans targeting companies in need of capital, according to his 2011 indictment. Investment fraudsters, FBI Special Agent in Charge Eric Martinez explained, use the appearance of success to mask their tangled financial web of lies. President, indeed, as the financial con was cratering and investors were howling to get their money back, Rinkus faxed a bogus commitment letter to representatives of investors, the indictment says, claiming Atlas had secured a high-interest loan backed by significant collateral, none of which was true. At the height of the scheme, Rinkus allegedly gave a man named Thomas J. Didato letters from the Atlas Fund saying it would lend him $1.25 million. Didato was being investigated for stealing that very same amount from a client. Monroe County Assistant State Attorney Mark Wilson told a local newspaper. Didato was later found dead in his SUV in the parking lot of a cafe in March of 2010. Local police say Didato's death was a suicide. Well, that's convenient. That helps. And, of course, very interesting. Does this sound like a Ponzi scheme to somebody? He owes a client $1.25 million, and he convinces somebody to give him a fraudulent letter saying, I'm going to loan you that amount to get the guy off his back. That's Ponzi schemes for you. Rinkus even shafted Anzalone, I guess, the man who had vouched for his employment when Rinkus violated his probation by moving to Florida. He owed him $10,000 in restitution. In a twist, Anzalone himself was charged in 2014 as part of a separate $16 million investment fraud and was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for his own scheme. He could not be reached for comment. Of the people conned through the Atlas Fund, Rinkus owed John Burbine, 51, of Key West, Florida, and his wife Stephanie Bartley most of the money, or the most money, I guess, $200,000 plus in restitution. Burbine told BuzzFeed News he fell for the scheme because Rinkus seemed like a normal person. I'm stopping. I'll continue with the article, but I'm stopping to point this out. We need a businessman in the White House. Business people are smart. Money equals smart. You all know where I'm going to go with this, because you all believe it to begin with. I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but I feel like I got to get this out. It might be that having money either makes you stupid or identifies you as stupid. I don't know. Maybe there are no smart rich people. It's possible. Well, I guess what's really weird is once people, maybe it's just they get a hold of a little bit of money and they don't become super wealthy. But like thinking about, what's his name? Bernie Madoff, and what a huge scheme he pulled. I mean, he pulled it at the highest levels. He was walking around Wall Street as though he were one of the masters of the universe, where all it was a Ponzi scheme, but he had people who were really seriously mega wealthy believing he was a financial genius for a long time. At a lower level, there's just this nonsense. Here's a guy, some jackass, John Burbine. I'm sure he's a fine guy. I actually have evidence that he's an idiot, but okay. I'm sure he's a nice person, maybe. I don't know. Why do I even bother being apologize for this guy? He's probably a scumbag. I don't know. F you, John Burbine. We'll see if I live to regret that. Maybe not. I mean, he's just a guy in West Palm Beach. Happens to have $200,000 or something like that in risk capital ready to go. And I'm looking for an investment. And you know what? If you got a hold of $200,000 in investment money, if I got $200,000 in investment money, what do we do? I'd be like, I'm basic, right? Call, I don't know, Charles Schwab. Call, Just get me a brand name blue chip investment advisor and buy me some more blue chip stuff. Buy me some stock. Get me some I don't know Netscape, Flues, Beans, something that's going to have a bigger Pets.com, something huge. Put me in blue chips for real and take some money and be like, this is awesome. I'm not even doing anything and I'm getting paid. This is terrific. Investing is fantastic. I don't know why they're always whining about not making enough money or why everybody's got to maximize shareholder value. You're not doing anything. Be glad that money's falling out of the sky. Anyway, another subject entirely. But here you got John Burbine giving away $200,000 based on what? He seemed like a normal person. And that's good, but that's the sort of thing that flies when something else recommends you. If I go to Charles Schwab, right, the local office, I don't know, Edward Jones, is that the other, that one's got investment advisories all over the place. Walk into Charles Schwab, I open up an account. Does the guy behind the desk who opens the account seem like a normal person? Yes. Is that enough for me? It is, because Charles Schwab. There's just a lot more there. They got deep pockets. If something goes horribly wrong and it turns out that the guy behind the counter who seemed normal is a wacko serial fraudster, there's going to be pockets there to get back at him. Whereas if, on the other hand, I go to the place above the vape shop and the guy in there seems like a normal person, that's not enough. Atlas Fund. Well, Atlas, that's pretty big. You got to be pretty big to hold up a globe, right? So they must be huge. The location seems weird, but vaping is normal. Don't attack the vapors. We don't want to do that. They're nice people. So you look normal. You have a shop. Here's $200,000. You deserve it. You deserve to lose. Screw you. I mean, okay, the court system will try to disgorge your $200,000. But the point is, you're never going to get it back because you went to the place, the Atlas Fund that nobody ever heard of, over the vape shop. Not that the vapors had anything to do with it. I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking the idiot above you. So why do you do that? He seemed like a normal person. But this guy is sitting down in Key West, almost assuredly telling people, I'm smart, I'm rich, look at me, I like Donald Trump, or I believe in Donald Trump because he's rich, and that makes him smart. I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Burbine might be a fine and progressive guy. Perhaps he's listening to the show. Perhaps in 10 years I'll be dating him, or his daughter, for all I know. Anyway, I'm just amazed at how many people give crap away for nothing. And this is, I don't know, now I'm losing faith in humanity between yesterday's story about the paint guy and this guy. And this isn't even the villain of the story. God, get back to Rinkus. Burbine told BuzzFeed News he fell for this game because Rinkus seemed like a normal person. He was good at what he did. He played the part, walked the walk, talked the talk, Burbine said. And then he took my money. Again, why am I doing this? Why? I can't, you know what? I seem like I'm screaming my head off to nobody. I mean, you're listening, but there's nobody in this room, and I'm agitated and screaming at a microphone. There's nobody here face to face with me. Do I seem like a normal guy to you? Maybe that's why I can't do it. This guy says, give me $200,000, and somebody did it. Now, at that point, my job is done, right? Like right now, somebody give me $200,000 at patreon.com. I will get you, there will be so many zeros in your return, you won't even believe it. It's a huge, huge investment opportunity. You won't believe how many zeros. It's all zeros, but go ahead. Please, somebody who's very wealthy. I won't even pull your leg. There's going to be no return. I'm going to keep the money. Please, if I wanted $1 million, I'd pretend there was going to be a return. I'm only asking for $200,000. Put it in my patreon.com/KagroX account, or better yet, send it to me through Square Cash, and I will keep that money, and then I won't even bother anybody else. You know what you'll be doing? You'll be preventing financial fraud running into the millions. There'll be so many victims you will save, because I would say, $200,000, I am done. I'm done for the year. I'll come back next year and ask you, all right, to be honest, I'll come back in 5 years and say, I need another $200,000. Somebody give that to me, and you'll be saving everybody so much trouble. But I can't get anybody to do that. I can't even get people to pay $10 a month. This guy says, give me $200,000, and it works because he seems normal. I really can't believe that. I just read about what this guy does. I'm in the Secret Service, everybody. I'll have you killed. I can't tell you about it, or I'd have to kill you. That guy seems normal. I can't get $10. All right. So he was good at it, and I'm not, I guess. Burbine was shocked to learn of Rinkus's connection to Trump. What? The President of the United States? The guy who does the same thing on a bigger scale? I'm so surprised. Oh, my goodness. I bet he voted for him. In a July 2011 hearing, during Rinkus's sentencing in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Judge Jonker also noted that Rinkus could not produce any tax returns since 2006. What? The President of the United States? No. A scumbag con artist by another name. Now, the other guy also can't produce any tax returns since 2005, but he's the President of the United States and therefore normal, if you look at that's interesting too, right? Oh, actually, it just hit on what we really need to glean from this whole thing, right? You mean you gave him $200,000 and he ran away with it? He stole your money and you're just a normal, upstanding American citizen? That's awful. Why did you give him the money? What, are you stupid? Is it your fault? No, it's not my fault. He seemed normal. Now, just to wrap things up here, now we know why it's dangerous to normalize Donald Trump. This is not normal. If we keep saying this is not normal, maybe not, we won't give him all our money and he won't run away with it. He seemed normal at the time, and I wasn't sure why he was sawing a hole in the floor of Fort Knox, but I figured that's what presidents do, right? I mean, he had a suit. He had a tie. Granted, the tie he kept stepping on, but the point is it was red. That's a power tie. Everybody knows that. So it seemed like cutting a hole in the floor of Fort Knox made sense at the time. I don't know. And then he said something, blah, 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 North Korea, time of war, how dare you. And I just got embarrassed and I left. It seemed normal. No, don't make that seem normal. And apparently that will solve a lot of problems and prevent a lot of financial crimes. And we might, have an interest in doing that. Anyway, it goes on here. So you really hit the wall, Judge Jonker said. This can't go on. There is a cost, a significant price and loss of freedom and separation from friends and loved ones to pay because of a significant pattern of wrongdoing. That is true for the rest of us. Those of us who work hard and follow the rules and succeed know that if we keep BSing judges, we're going to end up in jail. Not this guy. Not for long, anyway. He was released in November of 2014, and apparently to great success. He also was ordered, after his release, to 3 years of supervised release and to pay this $827,000 in restitution after pleas for leniency from Heather Rinkus, who in a letter promised the judge that her husband would learn and change as a result of what happened. Well, he still owes hundreds of thousands of dollars, and he's still running around pretending to be a big deal and a scumbag. But no one's arresting Heather Rinkus either. All right, next section. Let's just cram in one more before wrapping up because this is so incredible. I'll have all the connections is the next one. Heather Rinkus started working at Mar-a-Lago in July of 2015. She announced on her Facebook page to several congratulatory comments from friends and family. So in other words, long-time established family friend of Donald Trump. July of 2015. He was already running for president. That's when she lands there. The guest manager position at the exclusive club was tough to get, but she was blonde, so she got it. Ari Rinkus, though, according to 3 sources, said his wife had a leg up because she had worked for the DeVos family company. And we read sometime about what it was like to work for the DeVos family company, too. It was a really weird, cultish, bizarro place. Originally from Michigan, where the Rinkuses met and fell in love, and where Ari first went to prison, Heather worked there for the DeVos's Amway Hotel Corporation. I didn't realize they had a hotel. As a front desk supervisor for 6 years, and later as a nanny, according to her LinkedIn page. When the Rinkuses first moved to the Palm Beach area, 2 sources said they brought up the DeVos family name. A spokesman for the family said the DeVosses had no personal relationship with Heather or Ari Rinkus. Betsy DeVos, daughter-in-law of Amway co-founder Richard DeVos, now serves as Secretary of Education. In a brief telephone interview, Heather Rinkus kept repeating, "I have no information on that," in response to a series of questions, including how long she worked at Mar-a-Lago and whether the Amway Hotel Corporation helped land the job. She ended the interview by hanging up. "I have no information on that." "When did you first start working there?" "I have no information on that." "Well, I do. I read your Facebook page. The answer is July 2015. Why won't you confirm that?" "I have no information on that. I'm not married to a grifter. I'm not lying now. I'm not scamming anybody." Click. "I didn't ask you that." "All right, well, whatever." In interviews, 4 people said Ari Rinkus, who was going by Ari Rink at the time, pitched them on proposals that would benefit from his wife getting the Mar-a-Lago job and having access to wealthy members and to Trump. He kept saying, once my wife gets that job, I'll have all the connections for you, said one of the sources, a person who has worked closely with Rinkus. Don't admit to being that person. All 4 sources requested anonymity because they didn't want to be arrested. And they say they fear Rinkus could hurt their business or career. How? I don't know. They all said they had known him for, at minimum, nearly a year. Having access to wealthy people is how he operates, said the person who worked closely with Rinkus. That's his M.O. And of course, to be honest, that's a legit M.O. too, right? You walk around as a legit wealth management advisor. You got to have access to people with wealth. That's true. Now, if you're going to steal it, that's just smart. I go where the money is. Why do you rob banks? Because that's where the money is. That makes you a bank robber. That makes me smart, just like robbing the United States government does. In addition to those 4 sources, Richard Allison, a local real estate agent, said Rinkus was very good at going out there and socializing and finding people who would be good investors. Marks, that is to say. Allison said that Rinkus had pitched him several deals, but they hadn't consummated any of them because they're not real. Rinkus's pitches to investors intensified once Trump won the GOP nomination and have continued to escalate since his surprising win in November, the 4 sources said. He immediately brings up his wife's job. That's how he ropes investors in. Seems like a normal guy, said one of those sources, whom Rinkus approached on a potential business deal involving investments in a marina and restaurant. Ari Rinkus also frequently distributes pictures of his wife. I bet. One, inside an opulent doorway at Mar-a-Lago, shows Trump giving his iconic thumbs up while Heather, tall, blonde, and deeply tanned, holds one hand on her hip and flashes a big smile. There's a few of Heather getting a tour of Air Force One, and several of her with senior White House staff. The pictures back up Ari Rinkus' bragging about his connections to the president, especially at local bars, where he is known to approach wealthy individuals for investments in real estate and other projects, according to the 4 sources. Really, just in bars. Approaching people, whatever. Asked if she was playing any role in her husband's efforts. Guess what she said? I have no information on that. Under the conditions of his probation, Rinkus isn't allowed to have a job that would require him to exercise fiduciary duties. Ooh, a clue. To give investment advice or to make investment decisions, to solicit funds, or to handle other people's money without the advanced written approval of the probation officer. He's also, by the way, supposed to refrain from all use of alcohol, which he'll tell you over a vodka soda, no doubt. But by the way, how interesting is this? He's prohibited from having a job that would require him to exercise fiduciary duties. What was one of the first targets in the financial world of the Trump, was it by executive order that they did this, or was this one of the few things that they squeaked past Congress? Didn't we just recently read that Trump wanted to roll back the rules requiring that investment advisors actually exercise fiduciary duty to their investors? I doubt very much whether this has anything to do with Rinkus, personally, because I just think he's just not important at all to Donald Trump. But how fascinating is that? Well, I'm prohibited from having any job that requires me to exercise fiduciary duties. But as we all know, the president just said that from now on, investment advisors will not have fiduciary duties. So I guess that means I can do it. I'm in violation of all the rest of it too. But look, the point is yada, yada, something. Give me $200,000. And for him, it works. Reginald Michael, the chief U.S. probation officer for the Southern District of Florida, declined BuzzFeed News' request to turn over documents related to Rinkus and also declined to answer questions. And here's a picture of the very trustworthy Mr. Rinkus in his 2005 mugshot. Rinkus' latest endeavor, by the way, involves a UK-based company. Look out, Parleo. Don't invest in that. Gideon, stay away from Secura Blinds. Although don't sue me, Secura Blinds. I'm not certain that you're not a good investment. I just say go into it with your eyes open, as you would with all investments. Who is Secura Blinds? They're a producer of security blinds for blast protection and forced entry prevention. That is setting up shop in the United States in part to win government contracts, according to the company's chairman, Brian Wilkins. In a brief interview, Wilkins described Rinkus as an associate, but asked for specifics on his role. Wilkins responded, I don't know where this conversation is going, and asked BuzzFeed News to email the rest of its questions before he hung up. No response to any subsequent emails. The back of Rinkus' business card, on which he identifies himself as A.D. Rinkus, features the Securablinds logo. And really, frankly, if there's anything on the back of someone's business card that purports to be important at all, that's a person. Don't deal with it. One-sided business cards are a mark of class, if you ask me. If you have anything, try to print like the Constitution on the other side or whatever. I don't know, man. Two-sided business cards? I don't know. I'm probably insulted about half of you out there now, but I don't know. I'm old school when it comes to business cards. Although really, what's the point anymore? Rinkus told BuzzFeed News that he and a local attorney, Bill Jacobson, were responsible for bringing Securablind to the U.S. And indeed, in February, the firm established an American base in Palm Beach, the president's backyard, as Rinkus puts it. Jacobson said the location was chosen because the company is considering a plant in Florida. Jacobson is a real estate lawyer whose license to practice law was briefly suspended in 1989 by the Florida bar for 10 days after he concealed a consulting fee in real estate transaction. According to records obtained from the bar, Jacobson said the incident occurred many years ago, and he's in good standing with the Florida bar now. Rinkus said that he and Jacobson are seeking government contracts for Securablinds, and he's mentioned the company to the White House and the Trump Organization staff, including Eric Trump. Questioned about details, the usually chatty Rinkus became more restrained. I can't talk about that. And on and on and on. So more of the same, of course. I won't even be able to get you to the next section, which is entitled, Well, I Lied. That story, and what was he lying about? That story about the cop who let him off? Well, I lied. I don't work for the Secret Service, he says. What do you know? Amazing that when pressed on it, he basically says, what I told you happened. Nothing happened. It didn't happen. There was no such story. He made it up. It goes on, and not surprisingly, the whole thing falls apart, and as soon as they're able to press him on details, he withdraws all of his story, and he's no longer the fabulist that he claims to be. But just another illustration of the kind of people that I think are empowered to try and exploit the most tenuous connections to a sketchy person in his own right, Donald Trump, for their own profit. I mean, really, we are looking at an unprecedented amount of corruption, not even all connected to Donald Trump, but there's so many people around him who see that he has scammed his way to where he is. They figure there's probably no chance that they can't also scam their way to wherever it is they think they're going. And the idea that they would be prosecuted for it, caught and called out, I assume their belief is my connection, such as it is to Donald Trump, will have him freaked out and nervous and sweating. I can't have these people prosecuted. I'll pardon them. I'll get them off the hook. I'll talk to the DOJ on their behalf. Anybody that investigates them is going to end up at me. So that's why I think these people think they can get away with it. In the meantime, the reality is Donald Trump will say, I don't care what you investigate. Go ahead. The whole point of being president is everybody else goes down for my mistakes, not me. I'm safe. And largely, I can't tell you that he's not right, historically speaking. All right. Historically speaking, now is about the time that we hand things over to the guys on the after show for their show. They will catch you up on all the really, truly important headlines that I ignored in order to rail about my own particular stuff. But this Friday is a therapy show for me. But for them, it's serious business. What do they got for you today? Emails obtained in a public records request revealed Jane Sanders, wow, has been under an FBI investigation for at least a year because of fraudulent loans. Everybody's in on this game, I guess. Trump's first lower court nominee would make it easier to buy elections. That's good. I need to buy one. And Trump just might be ratcheting up conflict with North Korea. Why? To force South Korea to pay for missile defenses. It's a fantastic vertical integration scheme that he's come up with. He's a genius like no one else.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
And a deep dive on the last half, of course. That's their prerogative as well over at the after show. They'll remember Gref Crystal, the insider who blew the whistle on corporate greed. And experts will carry out tests to determine how a rare copy of the Declaration of Independence found its way into an archive in southern England.